Hello, can you hear me?
So today we are going to start a kind of modification of PCA. Actually, it's a new technique, but many people confuse it with PCA. So that is known as factor analysis. Okay. So what is factor analysis and how is it different from PCA? Now, mathematically, many things are same. Okay. So mathematically, you may not be able to see very significant difference, but you should always remember that philosophically, as a concept, there is a lot of difference. Okay, between PCA and factor analysis. How? We will just see in a minute. Okay. Um, so how is it different? What did we do in PCA? In PCA, what we did was we had some variables. We were interested, of course, in those variables, but because the number of variables was very high, we knew that we could not visualize properly. Hence, we tried to reduce the dimension by converting those variables into some important linear combinations. Okay, that's what we did. So how would that help us? Because that actually gave me a way to visualize the two new linear combinations, right? So we had some variables from which we tried to construct new PCs, correct? In factor analysis, things are opposite. We are interested in some abstract variables. Now, what do I mean by abstract variables? So, for example, you might be interested in something like, say, IQ of a person. Okay. But are you really interested in IQ? Is IQ something which is of real interest to you? No. What is real interest to you is the intelligence of that person. Correct? IQ is just one way of capturing intelligence of that person. Am I right? The real point of interest is intelligence. Similarly, you might be interested in assessing, say, emotional strengths or emotional abilities of a person. You cannot directly measure emotional strength, so you go for something called as EQ. Correct? Then you might be wanting to know, is this person really does this person really have a good logical reasoning skills? But then again, you cannot get some scale and measure the logical reasoning skills of that person. So what you do is you design some test which can measure the logical reasoning skills, and that test score you probably take as an indication of logical reasoning skills of that person. Am I right? That's how you try to capture the things which cannot be directly quantified. Okay, there are things which cannot be directly quantified, which cannot directly be measured. So you try to capture those things via these IQ, EQ, test score, these things. Am I right? So factor analysis is useful in this type of situation. Okay. So when you have few variables which you are actually interested in, but they are sort of non-measurable, but I'm not saying non-measurable in the sense of probability theory. You will learn measurability in probability theory, but that is completely different. Here, what I mean to say is quantifying them is difficult. Okay, quantifying them is difficult, and hence you try to what you do is you try to measure those variables which can actually be quantified. So for example, IQ, EQ, test score, etc., and using those variables you try to conclude or infer something about these abstract variables in which you are interested. Okay, so these are actually our variables of interest, but they would be known as latent variables. Okay, what they are known as? So these would be known as latent variables. So in The major difference between PCA and factor analysis is, in PCA, there is nothing called as latent variables. Okay, you don't have anything behind the scene in which you are interested. Whatever you are interested in, you are measuring those things. Okay. Whereas in factor analysis, you should first have some such abstract or latent or non-quantifiable variables in your mind. In fact, those are the variables in which you are interested. You are not really interested in IQ, EQ, test score, etc. But unfortunately, the variables in which you are actually interested cannot be measured, cannot be quantified. Hence, you go for something which can be quantified, and that's IQ, EQ, etc. Okay. So, as I said, philosophically, this is the major difference between factor analysis and PCA. In PCA, everything is known, everything is seen, everything is observed. Whereas in factor analysis, you are interested in these unobservable variables. That they are your key actually. Okay, you are not really concerned about these guys. Your major focus is on these, but unfortunately, because they are not measurable, you go for these measurable things, you go for things which can be quantified, and then you try to talk about your real variables of interest with the help of these things. Is it okay? Okay. So this is the basic philosophy of factor analysis, and as a result, because it has such type of application, because it is useful in such type of situation, most of the times it is used more in social sciences than in physical sciences or exact sciences as we call them. Okay, for example, things like biology or chemistry or physics, there factor analysis is completely comparatively used less number of times. Of course it is used, but still comparatively less number of times, whereas it is used more in psychology, okay, or in fields like say market and like market research, etc. Okay, so how is it useful in fields like psychology or market research? So one example I gave here. In fact, you might have heard of theory of multiple intelligences. If some of you read general things, then you might have heard of something called as Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence. So that basically is kind of like beginning of factor analysis applications. Okay, so Gardner proposed that every human being is intelligent. Okay, it's not that some people are dumb and some are intelligent. Every human being is intelligent, just that there are different facets of intelligence. So some people might have good logical reasoning skills, some people might have good linguistic abilities, some people might have good spatial reasoning skills. What do I mean by spatial reasoning skills? They can visualize the three-dimensional space in a very good manner. For example, for those people, it would be very easy to park a car. Visualize what is where very easily, even if they can't actually see things. Okay. Whereas those who lack spatial skills, for them, it may be difficult to navigate, navigate a vehicle through, say, narrow passages, etc. Okay. So these are spatial reasoning skills. So some people may be good at that. Some people may have good musical abilities. Okay. See, for example, I know in the our traditional setup, we generally associate intelligence with academic success, but that's not what Gardner said, and that's where factor analysis actually came into popularity. So he suggested that everyone has some sort of intelligence, so everyone is intelligent. Just the thing is, you have to identify which intelligence is prominent in that person. For example, Sachin Tendulkar is intelligent at his own place, Lata Mangeshkar is intelligent at her own place, Amitabh Bachchan is intelligent at his own place, and at the same time, APJ Abdul Kalam is also intelligent at his own place. Each of these people have different kind of intelligence, and hence, and they could discover the field in which they are intelligent, and hence they could be successful. Okay. So that's where factor analysis comes into picture. So you try to see some abstract things which cannot be measured. Okay. So as I said, these intelligence tests and all those things are very typical applications of factor analysis. And some other applications of factor analysis include, as I said, in market research. For example, I was once told a story, real life story. So there was some company which used to produce watches, wrist watches. Okay. Nowadays, I think most of you don't need a wristwatch. Your mobile phone has a watch in it, but this company used to produce wristwatches, and before launching a new product, they wanted to survey which factors or okay, now when I say factors, I'm using it in the English sense, not in the statistical sense. So which factors are important for customer? So they listed many things, and then they try to get opinions of the customers on those factors. Now they, okay, of course, some of the results are expected. People want the watch to be sturdy, etc., etc. Now what they realized that I mean, they did interview both some men and some women. Okay, so their sample consisted of people of both the genders, and what they realized was uh, one significant aspect. For example, waterproof. The watch should be water resistant. This is an old story. Okay, so water resistant watches was not a common thing. Nowadays, it's a very common thing. So what they realized that women had given more preference to water resistant watches, and not only just that, when the things combine. So how does factor analysis really work? Let me first tell that, then it would be easier for you to understand. Okay, so what you have in factor analysis is, so you have some variables which you can't observe, right? So let me call those variables as, say, Z1, Z2, Z3, and suppose Z4. Okay, so Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4 are actually the variables of interest, but unfortunately you cannot measure them. So what you do is you try to measure some related variables. Okay, so what are those related variables? Those variables are, say, X1, X2, up to, say, okay, let me write X3, X4 because I want to finally draw connections. So X3, X4, then X5 and X6. Okay, so suppose I've measured 6 variables, and from these 6 variables, I want to infer about Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4. So what factor analysis does is, so you have these Xi's and you try to relate them to Zi's. So how do you do that? So maybe this Z1 is probably controlling, say, X1 and X2 both. Okay, Z1 is probably controlling X1, X2. Z2 is probably controlling X5 and X2. Z3 is probably controlling X3, X4 and X6. And Z4 is probably controlling X1 and X5. Okay, now few things to be noted. With every Z, right now I have associated more than one Xi's. That need not be the case. Sometimes it could be, but it could also be multiple Xi. That's what I want to highlight. So every Z means every unobserved or latent variable could possibly be controlling multiple observed variables. Okay, and reverse way also means every X could have influence of multiple Z's. For example, in my case, X1 is getting affected by Z1, Z2, Z4, all three. Okay, so every observed variable could possibly be a result of multiple Zi's. Okay, in fact, that is what we try to do. So when we write a mathematical equation for factor analysis, we take Xi's on left hand side and we express these Xi's as some combination, some linear combinations of the Zi's. Express these Xi's as some linear combination of the Zi's. Okay. Now, of course, because we express Xi's as linear combination of the Zi's, we can try to find reverse thing also, but then there is a dimension issue and all. We'll discuss it later when we go enter into the actual theory. Okay, so I was talking about the market research example. Now, normally when people do factor analysis, what they do is, so once you get this model, once you've decided, okay, finally this, from the data I have built a factor analysis model, and then I try to identify these factors and people try to name these factors. So this Z1 may get some name depending on which all observable variables are getting controlled by Z1. Z2 would get some other name and so on. So for example, when you're talking about a watch, say durability of a watch can be one factor, sturdiness of the watch can be something else. Of course, they are related. Okay, a watch which is more sturdy would be more durable, something like that. Okay, so they were trying to name such factors, and what they realized was when they focused only on the data submitted by women, this water resistantness entered the sturdiness factor. Whereas for men, that was not the case. For men, water resistant, whether they want the watch to be water resistant or not, or how much they rate the requirement of that need, was not getting combined with the sturdiness factor. And then when they started discussing with some of the women that they had interviewed, they realized that most of these women, they are working women, but when they come home from office, they are in such a hurry that they may not remember to take off their watch and they start working. Okay, and they start working in the kitchen, so they are washing utensils, so they are constantly using water, so their watch is likely to come in contact with water and get damaged. So for them, while purchasing the watch and while considering it to be a sturdy watch, water resistance is important factor. Whereas for men, that's not the case. For them, water resistance is not that important for sturdiness. For them, the belt being strong, or when the watch falls down, whether it can still remain intact and functional, those things are more important from the sturdiness perspective. Okay, so this is where factor analysis can sometimes bring out things which we may not normally realize, even though they may be obvious. Okay, so as I said, what we are going to do is we are going to have some observed variables xi's, and we are trying to model them as function of unobserved variable zi's. And of course, our model is not going to be perfect, so we would be having some error term which would capture the differences. Okay. Important difference between, say, factor analysis and PCA is many a times, in fact, almost all the times, solution in a factor analysis is actually an approximation. Okay, whereas in PCA, we did not see any error term. Do you remember? When I wrote down the PC equation, I wrote PC1 as summation AI xi. I did not write PC1 as summation AI xi plus error. So there is no error term involved in PCA. Okay. Whereas in factor analysis, when I write these xi's as functions of zi's, I would be adding error terms. I would be having xi's as some function of zi's plus the error term. Okay. Why? Because when we do factor analysis, these zi's, the factors are going to give me only the approximation to the observed variables. Okay. So factor analysis solution is almost always approximate. In very, 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 very few cases, it would be an exact solution. Okay, so it's always an approximation. Major difference between PCA and factor analysis. There is one more difference. In factor analysis, there is some concept called as rotation. So we'll again, when we see the theory, we will see what I mean by rotation. But that is actually what makes it more appealing. So in PCA, you got some linear combinations. You have to be just happy about that. You cannot, I mean, if you don't like those linear combinations for some reason, you cannot do anything to change them. Now, what do I mean by liking the linear combinations? So in the last lecture on Saturday, when we were discussing someone's doubts, I think one person asked me, what if in, say, a particular linear combination for, say, a particular PC, what if all the variables turn out to be almost equally important? And I told you that that really happens when you carry out PCA using correlation matrix, that in majority of the cases, in the first PC, almost all the variables have equal importance. Now, even if that's the case, and even if I want really only one or two variables, I can't do anything about it. I have to accept the result as it is. There is nothing I can do about it. However, in factor analysis, that is not the case. In factor analysis, there is something that you can do about it. Now, what do I mean by something? So you get some solution in factor analysis, but then if you don't like that solution, you have a choice of rotating that solution. Okay. What do I mean by rotating that solution? solution? Have you heard of the concept of rotation matrices in linear algebra? Am I audible? 1 second, 1 second. My sound was off. So if someone has talked anything, I don't know. My volume was muted. Hello? Is anyone awake?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I asked some question. Did anyone answer? Because my volume was muted, so I would not have heard if you have answered.
Not done rotation matrices in linear algebra.
We have not done rotation matrices. Okay. So there is a concept called as rotation matrices in linear algebra. So what it does is it rotates your coordinates. So if you have some vectors, then they could be rotated. So okay, you may not have done in syllabus, but does anyone have any idea outside the syllabus thing? No? Nothing? Okay. Okay, let me start with a very small 2x2 matrix.
Ma'am, is it a sort of transformation?
Correct. It's a transformation. So, and we'll see if it is correct. Okay. So, suppose I have trigonometry comes to your rescue. So, I have cos theta minus sine theta and then say sine theta and minus cos theta. I might have missed, I might have written the signs wrong. We check in a minute. So sine theta and minus sine theta and plus cos theta. Yeah, one of them has to be positive, otherwise things won't be correct. Okay, let me make this as plus. Okay, so only this sine theta is negative. Now, I have to check whether this matrix is orthonormal. Do you know orthonormal matrices at least? Orthogonal matrices, do you know?
Yes, madam.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is an orthogonal matrix?
A into A transpose
Suppose
A into A transpose is?
the identity matrix.
Identity matrix, correct. And if I want to check in terms of rows and columns, so orthogonal matrix,
Then they are mutually orthogonal.
mutually orthogonal. So okay, does that happen in this thing? So cos theta into minus sine theta, and then sorry, I've made this plus. So cos theta sine theta and then minus sine theta cos theta. So this is orthogonal matrix. Yes or no? Okay. Now I've written slightly clearly. I know my handwriting today is worse than what it used to be, but okay. So cos theta sine theta, and then this is minus sine theta and cos theta. Is it orthogonal matrix? You have to either say yes or no. You don't have much choice.
Yes,
I
ma'am,
think why there is confusion.
Actually, I have taken the two rows.
Still okay. That's also fine. So if you take two rows, what do you have? Minus cos theta sine theta plus sine theta cos theta. Is it 0?
Yes, ma'am, it is
Okay.
zero.
And does the individual row or individual column have unit magnitude? So means
Yes, ma'am, it is.
yeah, so basically we should have say R1 prime R2 should be 0. So row 1's dot product with row 2 should be 0. Similarly, column 1's dot product with So R1 prime R2 should be 0. C1 prime C2 should be 0. But R1 prime R1 should be 1. Similarly, R2 prime R2 should also be 1. So are these things happening? R2 prime R2, R1 prime R1, or even C1 prime C1 and C2 prime C2. All these things should be 1. So is that happening? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes.
any matrix which satisfies these conditions would be called as a rotation matrix. Okay. And this rotation matrix, what it does is it transforms a vector. Okay. So let us take some, let us take some example. Let us take some actual vector. So I have, in fact, if you change any one sign to negative and keep everything else positive, this would still work, right? So you already got 3 rotation matrices. So right now, okay, I'm taking cos theta, sin theta, and minus sin theta and cos theta. Correct. Now if I rotate a matrix, sorry, or rotate a vector. So what would be the answer? Rotate means you have to just multiply. So 2 cross 2, 2 cross 1. So final answer is going to be 2 cross 1. So I will get a vector, but that would be a transformed vector. So what do I get? Cos theta plus 2 sin theta and minus sin theta plus 2 cos theta. So this is actually a rotated version of the original vector 1, 2, and the angle of rotation is theta. Okay, angle of rotation here is theta. Now, as you can see, this rotation or transformation matrix actually has that property of being orthonormal for every theta. Whichever value of theta you put, you get what you want. So basically, you can have multiple possible rotations. So if you put theta equal to 10 degree, you get one rotation. If you put theta equal to 25 degree, you get another transformation. So this single vector can actually be rotated in any angle to get different vectors. Okay. And factor analysis actually uses this mathematical property of rotation to get multiple solutions. So if you don't like a certain solution, you don't like in a sense if it's not much interpretable, okay, if it is not solving the problem which you wanted to solve, then you can rotate the solution, and the theory in factor analysis guarantees that the rotated version is also a solution. Okay, rotated version of your original solution is also a solution. And as I said, since you can have infinitely many possible values of theta, you actually get infinitely many possible solutions. But of course, they are all, they're almost equal. They are just rotated versions of each other. Okay, this is another thing which PCA doesn't have, but factor analysis has. Why am I trying to emphasize the difference between PCA and factor analysis? Because unfortunately, many people do not know the difference. And in fact, you would actually find many things over internet which say, okay, rotate the principal components and get something. But no, in that case, they are not actually rotating principal components. What they are doing is doing factor analysis. And to make matters worse, one method of doing factor analysis is via principal component analysis. So they are doing that. They are actually doing factor analysis with the help of PCA based method, and hence they can rotate those factors, but they call it as rotating PCs, and then everything becomes a mess in your head. What is PCA? What is factor analysis? And companies like Nielsen routinely ask this question. What is the difference between PCA and factor analysis? That is their favorite question. Okay. So it is very, very, very important that you know the difference. PCA does not have any unknown, or unmeasurable variables at its core, whereas factor analysis comes into picture only in that scenario. Means when you have something which cannot be quantified, but you are interested in studying that, then only factor analysis comes into picture. Otherwise, you can simply go for PCA. And then in factor analysis, you never get an exact solution. Almost all the cases, you get an approximate solution. Okay. And another beauty of factor analysis is that the solution that you obtain, if it is not interpretable, if it is not much meaningful from your domain point of view, then you can choose to rotate that solution, and you can keep on rotating till you get a solution which is interpretable or meaningful for you. Is it okay? And one more point, I said beauty of factor analysis is that it can give you many solutions. But unfortunately, students like us, means mathematics or statistics students, they are so used to getting exact solutions that they really find this rotation business, a bit undesirable or cumbersome, because for them it is like, okay, so many rotations are possible, so which one should I choose? Which one should I really try to interpret, etc. And this question comes majorly when you don't know much about domain. So for you, every solution either makes sense or it doesn't make sense. For you, every solution is equally good or bad. Okay. Hence, in factor analysis type of scenario, it is very, very important that you know the domain, because then only you would be able to choose the right solution. You will have many solutions in front of you, but choosing the right one can occur only when you have a good domain knowledge. Okay. So this is the difference between PCA and factor analysis. I have not yet started the theory at all. I just gave you some idea about how the model would be. So I don't want to start it today because I won't be able to cover much. And this philosophical difference I wanted to highlight because people often confuse things between PCA and factor analysis. So today I am not going to start the theory. If you have any doubt, we can discuss those first.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so let me stop. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.